we'll go here, and then there, and here. Let's do that. And then I'll get to that bunch in the next.
Nipun Bhai, what I noticed is that we haven't asked, there's not a single question from a lady. No?
Oh, no, we have plenty of ladies.
Sir, your life is miracle to me.
Yeah.
And about the miracle, one question is about Neem Koroli Baba. From 10 years back, I read his little bit of his. And one incident is narrated in that he was going from one place to another by a train, and ticket collector, he didn't have a ticket, and he just threw him out of the train. And the train after that is not moving at all. So my engineering brain does not accept this miracle. It must have happened. What is your...
How do you reflect on miracles? Let's see at that.
Just another one short question is about your experience with Mahavatar Baba.
That's a short question. Who did I say? Did I say mention it? Go ahead.
My question is, in this world that is filled with spiritual paths and teachers, especially in this modern world, where is it reasonable? I mean, do we each have to look for our own guru, or is it a mixture? Do we take from the ones that we resonate the most with and blend and create our own?
So many gurus, so little time.
You have a tissue?
How do we find? And then here.
I wanted to know if you, this meditation and prayer, are those different practices for you? And what, if I were to ask you for advice on what is the best way to pray, what wisdom would you share with me about prayer?
P-R-A-Y or P-R-E-Y?
What is the best way to pray? Beautiful question. So the first question on miracles, and then guru and prayer.
Now, as far as miracles are concerned, there's no way for you to check and find out if it happened. So it's better to leave it there. Seriously. Maybe the train stopped due to something, we don't know. And we have this adulation because of which we might attribute it to somebody. No fault of his, okay? No fault of Neem Koroli Baba. No. And it's also possible that it might have happened, we don't know. So what we don't know, we cannot speculate on either positive or negative. So just leave it there. It has nothing to do with spiritual life, so just leave it there. What was your second? About Mahavatar Babaji. Now that's, as you said, a very short question. Well, now we are touching upon something which is very hard to define. Because I and in my parampara, we don't think that being who is referred to as Mahavatar Babaji in Yogananda Paramahamsa's book, that was the first time that name was used, the term was used. For thousands of years in different traditions, this being is referred to as Sri Guru Babaji, or Nityanath, among the Naths. In this life of mine, I have met him only twice for a few minutes. But in my past life, it seems like I have an association with him. But then it's like the train stopping, you don't know. So it's better to leave it out there. But 2 times in my life here, I have had a short encounter with this being, and we don't believe that this is a human being born of an womb of a human being. I discredit all such stories because in our tradition, we think he's a being who is there for spiritual progress to guide others, not only those who practice Kriya Yoga, but everybody.
and prayer? Any reflections?
Now, as far as prayer is concerned, it's natural for us human beings in times of need and weakness and problems and pain to pray. But when you pray, prayer is also a form of meditation. But when you pray, you must understand the best prayer would be if you believe or accept that the God you pray to is omniscient. Then the best prayer would be, you know best what's happening and you know best how to take care of it. I stand before you. Because very often what we want may not be actually what we need to evolve. So you should make a small distinction between. And very often if you really pray very hard and say, this is what I want, and you get it, you will miss what you really need. Seriously, so one has to be, it's good to pray.
We have one question there, and we'll go there, and in the back. Okay, so rather first, yes.
Yeah, I think it got skipped here.
Sorry.
You asked the question, right?
Yeah.
We'll come back. So you did ask a question about gurus, and
That's
I wanted to ask you, in your recent book on meditation, you mentioned that the limiting thoughts and conditioned thoughts like I am this body, I'm a woman, I'm a man, whatever, these are a hindrance to access to the inner essence of energy in all of us. And then you mentioned that there are practical techniques which will minimize those limiting thoughts. Could you elaborate on those techniques?
techniques to eliminate limiting thoughts that allow us to go deeper in meditation. Yes.
So my question is short. What is ego and how can I overcome it?
I like how all the easy questions come right
Short
when you have to go. Yeah.
and large.
Yes.
Thank you so much for speaking about being kind to animals, because I feel so few spiritual teachers actually talk about that. And I'm part of an animal rights and animal liberation network. It's really hard for me to see so many cows and pigs and chickens suffering so tremendously in factory farms and slaughterhouses. So how do we, even explain that spiritually? How do we explain that there is, this really kind God that's making all these beings suffer so much? And what is our role? How can we free these beings? How do we call on Mahavatar, Babaji, and people Babaji to really help us? Because we've really tried to do that. It seems like it's such a big problem, and these beings are suffering so much. So thank you for saying that. Really appreciate your guidance.
How do you hold kindness towards animals from a spiritual context? It's way more beautiful the way you said it, but I apologize.
So which was the first question?
The limiting thoughts. How do you support how do you overcome the limiting thoughts?
Well, what I said was that the first thing that you need to understand is that we are actually in essence unlimited. In true essence, we are not limited in any way. But we are now identified ourselves with a certain personality and certain being, and therefore we are limited. So the first thing to do as a practice is when you sit down to meditate, just keep in mind that when I am meditating, it's just an action that is happening to me and I am not doing anything. This is one way of looking at it. Or to see that while I meditate or I don't meditate or I'm involved in worldly activities, can I once in a while see myself as a witness and not get involved with it? As a witness. These are some of the simple practices that one can do.
Ego and how do we overcome?
If you are looking for some magic switch, there is nothing there. As Patanjali said, Nairantarya Abhyasana. Regular practice is required. If somebody is giving you an instant technique, is promising an instant technique to liberation, run away. As far as
This is Silicon Valley.
Ego and how do you overcome it?
now this is, you said it's a short question, it's one of the biggest questions. Actually, ego, everybody has an ego. There's nobody who doesn't have an ego. If you think you're looking for an egoless state, it doesn't exist. But there is a good ego and there is a bad ego. When I say bad ego, not in the sense of evil, a good ego is the ego which not only thinks of itself, but thinks of others also. And an ego which is a negative ego always thinks only about itself. So even if self-discovery turns out to be you're trying to reiterate your own self and not about others, then it becomes negative in its approach. I know people who say we are looking for the inner self, we want to be free of ego, and are very egotistic. We have to watch this carefully. Am I behaving with others whom I know, my relatives, my friends, my neighbors, in a way where my ego is not working? Or only when I sit down to meditate, I am saying I have to be free of the ego. You know what I mean? So, what you meditate upon, you need to bring into practice in daily life. So there is inner awareness and there is outer awareness, and both of them have to go together. So, for your question, if you really want to be free of the negative ego, I said there is no such thing called egoless negative ego. To develop the positive ego, Gita says, the mind can be your friend, the mind can be your enemy. So develop the friendly part of the mind and ignore the enemy. And this should happen in daily practice. And then when you sit down to meditate, you'll see that it works.
And in the realm of animal rights, and how do you explain it?
Animal rights, well, I don't know there's any universal way of bringing it about. I think you said, what can people like Babaji do? Babaji has probably inspired you to work for animal welfare. Like he's inspired me to do something. I'm the scapegoat, so you have to be the scapegoat. So, you know what I mean? It requires a great deal of rethinking and sacrifice to get back to it. People have now lost it. We are only interested in something that tastes good to us. Something that's not useful to us is discarded. So the mindset has to change, and it's not an easy thing to change the mindset of this whole world. But if I start with myself, then I'm starting with some part of the world. And then it spreads and it reflects, but it is hard work. This much I can tell you. People may not agree with you also. And if you go generally to a spiritual person and say, think of human beings, forget the dogs. So, we need to change this slowly. I'm glad that you're working on it. Look at Yudhishthira. He refused to go to heaven without his dog.
Do you want to do one more round of 3 or should we end?
We still haven't discussed this young man.
Okay. Should we do
about the gurus.
Yes. Cool.
That's my favorite topic.
So little time. All right, let's do that. Okay, and we'll have that be the last question then.
Mommy had a question too.
So we should also give her a chance.
We should give her. She's the host.
How would you advise lay people to implement the Karma Yoga of Gita?
If you say us lay people, I'm also a layman. So how do we implement karma? Now, Karma Yoga, the crux of the theory of karma is that what you have done in the past is influencing the present. And what you're doing now will influence the future. This is the crux. Now regarding what has happened before and what you have done before, you cannot go back and tinker with it. It's over. Future, we don't know. So what are we left with now? So, how we conduct ourselves now decides what is going to be the future. That's one part of the thing. Other is when you say karma yoga, it means work, of course, but it really becomes the word karma yoga when the work becomes more and more selfless. Everybody works for themselves, but if you begin to work for others also, then it really begins to become karma yoga from the point of view of the Gita. Because then you're not only saying to yourself that the divine self is in every heart, you're also proving by your action, practical action, that it is so. This is karma yoga, according to my understanding. Last question. Okay.
Did you want to add anything to it? You had your hand up. No. Okay.
No, let me start this way. It's not always necessary to keep looking for a guru. But from whatever information you have on the subject at the moment, it's good to make a start in your spiritual journey. One. Having said that, in this world, modern world, when there are more gurus than disciples, it will be very difficult to, pinpoint and figure out whom to catch and what to do. However, if you find good points in what somebody is saying, it's a very good idea to adapt it. But you don't have to worship that person, you know what I mean? The moment you find somebody beginning to make you want to worship them, then I would think you discard and move forward. So, start with a free mind and don't get too much caught up in this guru circuit. Be free of it, so that when you move forward on this journey, you can say, well, I think this way. You don't say, oh, Sri M said this way. Then you're gone. I met my teacher, I was with him, but he made sure that I always stood on my own 2 feet. If anyone is shaking you out of standing on your own feet, I would personally avoid, especially at your age. You're young, you need to move, you need to develop. But if somebody is saying good things, please adapt them. But don't, in Urdu we have a word, don't become fida. Because it is fraught with danger nowadays. Before I end, I must tell you, ma'am, we need to stop. It's about 5 minutes past 9 already. But I want to tell you, a young man, now we are talking about a real teacher and a real disciple. A young man went to a guru and a teacher in the Himalayas who lived in a kutir, small kutir, cottage. And he said, sir, what should I do I admire you, what should I do to become a good disciple of yours? So I said, okay. Well, you need to wake up in the morning at 4 o'clock. He said, all right. And then you need to go to the Ganga and have a bath. He said, in winter? He said, yes. Okay. And then bring some water from there and clean the kutir. Okay? And then bring firewood and light the dhuni. Okay? Then sit down and meditate for a while. Okay? Then do your yogasanas for half an hour. Alright? Then we have a study class. He said, just a minute, he's wondering when the breakfast part is coming. Nothing seems to come. Okay. And then you have a study class of Upanishads and yoga. Okay, fine. And then, and it went on, and he was wondering, now breakfast is gone, now when is the lunch break? And then he says, just a minute, I want to ask you another question. What does it take to be a guru? I said, very simple. Sit down, put your hands up and bless everybody. He said, please make me a guru. I don't want to become a disciple. Food for thought. Thank you very much. It was an enjoyable. I'm sorry I couldn't take all the questions because I need to go. So Nipun Bhai is here again. We can meet maybe next year.
Yeah. Thank you for.
I like this young man. So we can meet. And thank you, sir, for hosting us. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
Om Shanti Shanti.